You know what's crazy? The smarter you are, the better you are at destroying your own happiness. I'm serious. I've spent 50 years watching brilliant men, engineers, doctors, professors, turn their own minds into torture chambers. They overthink everything. They demand perfection. They catastrophize. And here's the kicker. They think they're being logical. They think their misery is justified because they can explain it so well. But that's the trap. Your intelligence isn't making you rational. It's making you a master at irrational thinking. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how you're doing it and how to stop. Look, I've worked with thousands of people over 5 decades. CEOs, professors, engineers, people who could solve complex problems in minutes, but couldn't figure out why they felt miserable every day. And here's what I discovered. Intelligence and emotional health have nothing to do with each other. In fact, smart people often suffer more because they're better at convincing themselves their irrational beliefs are rational. You take your anxiety and dress it up in logic. You take your self-hatred and call it high standards. You take your catastrophic thinking and call it being realistic. But here's the good news. Once you see the game your mind is playing, you can't unsee it. And that's what this video is about. I'm going to show you the exact thinking patterns that are sabotaging your happiness. The ones that sound so reasonable you've never questioned them. I'm going to reveal the 3 core beliefs that turn smart men into their own worst enemies. And I'm going to give you a simple framework to catch yourself in the act and change it. This isn't therapy talk. This isn't think positive nonsense. This is about seeing reality clearly and stopping the mental habits that are making you suffer for no good reason. Because you don't have to feel this way. You just think you do. Now, every emotional problem you have comes from demanding that reality be different than it is. And smart men make 3 specific demands that guarantee misery. I call them the 3 irrational musts. And I promise you, they're doing at least one of these right now. The first must is this. I must perform perfectly and win approval. You've convinced yourself that making mistakes means you're worthless. You tie your entire self-worth to achievement and what others think. Every setback becomes a referendum on your value as a human being. I had a client once, a brilliant executive, ran a company with hundreds of employees. This guy could negotiate million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. But put him in front of a presentation and he'd have panic attacks. Why? Because he believed that anything less than perfection meant he was a failure. Not that he failed at the presentation, that he was a failure as a person. You see the difference? He took one situation and turned it into a statement about his entire existence. And this is what you do. You don't just think, I wish I had done better. You think, I'm incompetent, I'm worthless, I'm a fraud. This isn't high standards. This is emotional extortion you're doing to yourself. You're holding your self-worth hostage to outcomes you can't fully control. And smart people are especially good at this because you can always find something you could have done better. There's always a flaw to obsess over. Always a mistake to prove you're not good enough. The second must is this. Others must treat me fairly and kindly. You expect people to behave the way you think they should. When they don't, you don't just feel disappointed. You feel outraged, betrayed, devastated. You're spending enormous emotional energy demanding the impossible. I knew a lawyer once, brilliant guy, sharp as they come. He could win cases that seemed unwinnable. But his personal relationships were a disaster. Why? Because he couldn't accept that people sometimes behave badly. His wife forgot his birthday one year. She was dealing with her sick mother. She was overwhelmed. She forgot. Reasonable people understand this happens. But not him. He spiraled. He made it mean she didn't love him. She didn't respect him. The marriage was over. He demanded that she must never make mistakes. And when she did, he couldn't handle it. And I see this everywhere. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and you're furious for an hour. A friend doesn't text back fast enough, and you decide they don't care about you. Your boss gives you critical feedback, and you feel personally attacked. Why? Because you're demanding that people must treat you the way you want. But here's reality. People are going to be selfish sometimes. They're going to be unfair sometimes. They're going to be thoughtless sometimes. That's not injustice. That's Tuesday. That's human beings being human beings. And the more you demand they be different, the more you're going to suffer. The third must is this. Life must be easy and give me what I want. You catastrophize when things go wrong because they shouldn't go wrong. You feel entitled to comfort and become enraged when life is difficult. And smart people are especially vulnerable to this because you're used to solving problems. You're used to figuring things out. So when life throws you something you can't control, you lose your mind. I'll tell you about myself. When I was younger, I had terrible social anxiety. I was terrified of talking to women. And you know what my problem was? I demanded that dating be easy. I demanded that I should know exactly what to say, that women should respond the way I wanted, that I should never feel awkward or rejected. And when reality didn't match my demands, I didn't just feel nervous. I felt like the universe was treating me unfairly, like I was cursed, like something was deeply wrong with me. But here's what I finally figured out. Life doesn't owe you comfort. Your refusal to accept that is the source of your suffering. Things are going to go wrong. Plans are going to fall apart. People are going to disappoint you. Opportunities are going to slip away. And none of it means anything about you or your worth or whether life is fair. It just means you're alive on planet Earth where things don't always go the way you want. Now notice how all three of these sound reasonable. That's the trap. They sound like standards, like principles. But they're not. They're demands on reality. And reality doesn't negotiate. You can demand that you must be perfect all you want. You're still going to make mistakes. You can demand that people must treat you well. They're still going to sometimes treat you badly. You can demand that life must be easy. It's still going to be hard sometimes. So the question is, are you going to keep demanding and keep suffering? Or are you going to accept reality and find peace? Now you might be thinking, but Ellis, these seem like good things to want. And you're right. Wanting them is fine. It's the demanding that destroys you. Let me show you how your brain tricks you into confusing the two. See, your brain is designed to believe first and think second. And the smarter you are, the better you are at defending beliefs you never chose to have in the first place. Here's how it works. Your brain has something called confirmation bias. It looks for evidence that confirms what you already believe. And smart people are better at finding sophisticated justifications for their beliefs. You think you're analyzing reality objectively, but you're not. You're being a lawyer for your anxiety. You've already decided you're not good enough, and now you're collecting evidence to prove it. I had a PhD student once who was convinced he was unlikable, brilliant researcher, published papers, respected in his field, but he believed nobody liked him. So what did he do? He looked for evidence. Someone didn't laugh at his joke. Proof they think he's boring. Someone left the conversation early. Proof they wanted to get away from him. Someone took a while to respond to his email. Proof they don't want to talk to him. Meanwhile, he completely ignored all the evidence to the contrary. The colleagues who invited him to lunch. The students who came to his office hours. The conference organizers who asked him to speak. None of that counted. Why? Because his brain had already decided he was unlikable, and it was only looking for confirming evidence. And you do this too. You decide you're a failure. Then you look for all the times you failed and ignore all the times you succeeded. You decide people don't like you. Then you look for signs of rejection and ignore signs of acceptance. You think you're being logical, but you're being a lawyer for your anxiety. You're building a case to prove you should feel terrible. Then there's emotional reasoning. This is the intelligence killer. You feel anxious, so you conclude there's danger. You feel worthless, so you conclude you're worthless. Feelings become facts in your mind. Let me give you an analogy. If I feel like there's a tiger in the room, I start looking for the tiger. I don't question whether the feeling is accurate. I assume the feeling means something. And smart men do this constantly. You feel intense anxiety, so you assume something must be wrong. You feel deep shame, so you assume you did something shameful. You feel overwhelming dread, so you assume something terrible is about to happen. But here's the truth. Just because you feel it strongly doesn't mean it's true. Feelings are not facts. They're reactions. Sometimes they're reactions to real threats, but often they're reactions to your own thoughts, your own beliefs, your own demands on reality. You demand that you must succeed. You don't succeed. You feel worthless. Then you take that feeling of worthlessness as evidence that you are worthless. But that's circular reasoning. That's your brain bullshitting you. Then there's the labeling game. You turn behaviors into identity statements. I failed becomes I am a failure. I did something awkward becomes I am awkward. This is what we call a category error. You're confusing an event with an essence. I worked with perfectionists for years who rated themselves as human beings based on single performances. They'd give a speech that didn't go perfectly, and they conclude, I'm a failure. Not the speech was imperfect. Not I could improve next time. But I, as a person, as a totality, am a failure. Think about how insane that is. You're not your behavior. You're a person who behaves. There's a massive difference. You're a complex human being with thousands of traits, experiences, capabilities. You can't be reduced to one label based on one action. But smart people do this constantly because it feels logical. It feels like you're just being honest about your inadequacies. But you're not. You're playing a rigged game where any mistake proves you're fundamentally flawed. And then there's catastrophizing with intelligence. You take a problem and immediately jump to worst-case scenario. And your intelligence helps you imagine vivid, detailed disasters. You mistake possibility for probability. Someone criticizes your work. Your brain immediately goes, I'm going to get fired. I won't be able to find another job. I'll lose my house. I'll end up alone and broke. Everyone will see what a failure I am. My life is over. You go from one piece of criticism to complete life destruction in about 10 seconds. And because you're intelligent, you can make it sound plausible. You can build the logical chain. You can imagine it so vividly it feels real. But your ability to imagine the worst doesn't mean the worst is coming. Most of the disasters you predict never happen. And the ones that do happen are rarely as catastrophic as you imagined. But you don't remember that. You just remember the anxiety. So you keep doing it. Here's what you need to understand. Your intelligence is a tool. It can be used to see reality clearly or to build elaborate prisons. And most smart men spend their lives building sophisticated arguments for why they should feel terrible. And they're so good at it, they never question whether the arguments are true. They just assume because the argument sounds logical, it must be right. But logic only works if your premises are true. And your premises, I must be perfect, people must treat me well, life must be easy, those premises are irrational. So no matter how logical your arguments, you're building on a faulty foundation. Okay, so if your brain is this unreliable, how do you know what's real? How do you separate actual problems from manufactured anxiety? That's where disputation comes in. And this is the most practical thing I'm going to teach you today. You need to become a lawyer against your irrational beliefs, not for them. And that means asking questions that challenge your automatic thoughts. First question, where's the evidence? When you think I'm a failure, ask yourself, where's the evidence for this? And I don't mean feelings. Feelings are not evidence. I mean actual facts. Where are the objective facts that prove you're a failure? Usually, you'll find there aren't any. What you have is, I failed at this specific task at this specific time. That's not evidence that you're a failure as a person. That's evidence that you're human, and sometimes humans fail at things. You need to distinguish between I failed at this task and I am a failure at life. Those are completely different statements, but your brain treats them as the same. I used to force my clients to prove their catastrophic predictions. They'd say, everyone thinks I'm an idiot. I'd say, prove it. Show me the evidence. They'd say, well, this person looked bored during my presentation. I'd say, that's evidence that one person looked bored. How did you get from that to everyone thinks you're an idiot? And usually they couldn't answer because there was no evidence, just their brain jumping to conclusions. Most of your beliefs about yourself collapse under basic scrutiny. If you were in court, could you prove your belief beyond reasonable doubt? No? Then stop treating it like truth. Second question, does the logic actually work? Does the conclusion follow from the facts? She didn't text back, therefore I'm unlovable. Does that make sense? No. There are 100 reasons someone might not text back. They're busy. Their phone died. They forgot. They're dealing with something stressful. They didn't see it. None of those have anything to do with whether you're lovable. But your brain skips right over all those possibilities and lands on the one that makes you feel worst. I made a mistake, therefore I'm worthless. This doesn't compute. Worthless means zero value. Are you seriously claiming that one mistake erases every good thing you've ever done? every skill you have, every person who cares about you? That's not logic. That's catastrophic thinking dressed up as logic. Here's a test. If someone else presented this logic to you, would you accept it? Or would you call them crazy? Your friend says, I was late to a meeting. I'm a terrible person. You'd say, no, you made a mistake. It's not that big a deal. But when you do it to yourself, suddenly it sounds reasonable. Why? Because you're not applying logic. You're applying emotional reasoning. Third question. Is this belief helping you or hurting you? Does catastrophizing about the future actually prevent bad outcomes? Does ruminating about the past change what happened? You spent 100 hours worrying about being rejected. Did any of that worry prevent rejection or prepare you better? Or did it just make you miserable? Be honest. Has your anxiety ever solved the problem? Or has it just made you avoid problems and feel terrible? Worry is not preparation. Anxiety is not planning. Rumination is not problem solving. These are just ways your brain spins in circles and convinces you it's being productive. It's not. It's just torturing you. Fourth question. What's another way to interpret this situation? Force yourself to generate 3 to 5 different explanations for what happened. Notice how your brain jumped to the most negative one automatically. I gave a presentation and one person looked bored. Interpretation 1. I'm terrible at presenting and everyone thinks I'm incompetent. Interpretation 2. That person was tired. Interpretation 3. That person got bad news earlier and is distracted. Interpretation 4. That person is generally hard to engage and it has nothing to do with me. Interpretation 5. My presentation was fine, but not perfectly suited to that one person's interests. See how many possibilities there are? But your brain picked interpretation 1. Why? Because that's what your brain does when it's running on irrational beliefs. It picks the interpretation that confirms what you already believe about yourself. Your first interpretation is almost always the most emotionally loaded and least accurate. So challenge it. Force yourself to see other possibilities. Here's how this works in real life. Let's say you give a presentation and one person looks bored. Your automatic thought, I'm terrible at this. Everyone thinks I'm incompetent. Stop. Apply the method. Evidence. One person looked bored. That's it. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they got bad news. Maybe they're bored with life. You don't actually know. Logic? One bored person means everyone thinks you're incompetent. That's insane. 20 people are engaged. One person is bored. And you conclude the one person is right? Usefulness? Does believing you're incompetent help you improve? No. It makes you anxious, avoidant, and less likely to practice. Alternative explanations? Maybe your content is fine and that person is having a bad day. Maybe your presentation was good, but not perfectly suited to that one person. Maybe they're just someone who looks bored regardless. See how this works? You went from I'm incompetent to I don't actually know what one person was thinking and it probably doesn't matter. That's the power of disputation. You stop accepting your thoughts as truth and start questioning them like a scientist, like someone who actually cares about what's real. This isn't positive thinking. I'm not telling you to believe you're great when you're not. I'm telling you to demand evidence before you convict yourself. Big difference. Now some of you are thinking this sounds exhausting. I have to question every thought. And the answer is no. Only the ones that make you suffer. But there's a deeper pattern here, and once you see it, everything gets easier. The pattern is this. You've spent your life trying to prove you're worthy. But worthiness isn't something you earn. It's something you decide to accept. And that decision changes everything. See, you cannot rate yourself as a human being. You can rate your behaviors, your skills, your outcomes, but not your essence, not your worth as a person. Every time you say I'm a failure or I'm worthless, you're playing a game you can't win because you're taking all of your complexity, all of your experiences, all of your traits, and reducing them to one label. It's impossible, and it's destructive. Let me give you an analogy. Trying to rate your worth as a person is like trying to rate a color as true or false. The categories don't match. A color can be bright or dull. It can be warm or cool, but it can't be true or false. Those are the wrong categories. Same with you. You could be skilled at some things and unskilled at others. You can succeed sometimes and fail sometimes. But you can't be inherently worthy or worthless. Those categories don't apply to human beings. But smart people love rating systems. It feels scientific. It feels logical. So you rate yourself constantly. And the problem is, you're using impossible standards. You demand perfection, then rate yourself based on whether you achieve it. You don't. So you conclude you're inadequate. But the game was rigged from the start. Here's what I want you to understand. You're not a performance. You're a person who performs. You're not your achievements or your failures. You're not your successes or your mistakes. You're not what people think of you. You're a living, breathing, complex human being who does things. Some of those things go well. Some don't. None of it defines your worth. Now you need to accept yourself with your flaws. And I mean really accept. Not tolerate. Not resign yourself to. Accept. You're going to make mistakes. Accept it. You're going to have limitations. Accept them. You're going to sometimes be awkward, inefficient, wrong. Accept all of it. This isn't about giving up. This isn't about not trying to improve. This is about stopping the war with reality. The war with yourself. I had terrible social anxiety when I was younger. Couldn't talk to women without feeling like I was going to die. And you know how I got over it? I accepted that I was anxious. I accepted that I was going to be awkward sometimes. I accepted that I wasn't some smooth, confident guy. And once I accepted that, I could stop fighting it and start living. I went up to 100 women and got rejected by most of them. And I survived. I proved to myself that the thing I was terrified of wasn't actually that bad. But I couldn't do that until I accepted that I wasn't perfect. The goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to be a flawed human being who refuses to torture themselves for being flawed. That's what mental health is. Not the absence of problems, but the refusal to make problems into catastrophes. The refusal to rate yourself as a person based on your problems. Now here's the hard part. You need to separate your worth from your achievement. Your achievements don't make you worthy. Your failures don't make you worthless. You're worthy by virtue of being alive. Period. Think about it like this. If a baby is born with disabilities, do they have less worth than other babies? No, of course not. Worth isn't earned. It's inherent. You don't become worthy by accomplishing things. You already are worthy. You just haven't accepted it. But you've been taught to tie worth to performance. That's the problem. You've been taught that you have to earn your place in the world, that you have to prove you deserve to exist, that your value is conditional on your success. And that's a lie. It's a cultural lie that makes people productive but miserable. You've bought into it completely, and it's destroying you. You have worth because you exist. Everything else is just what you do, not what you are. This is the hardest thing I teach, especially for smart men, because you've built your entire identity on achievement. You've made yourself worthy by accomplishing things. And now I'm telling you that was never necessary. You were always worthy. You just didn't believe it. Now you might be wondering, if I accept myself unconditionally, won't I become lazy? Won't I stop striving? And that's what most people fear. They think their self-hatred is what motivates them. They think if they stop beating themselves up, they'll stop trying. But that's not what happens. What actually happens is this. When you accept yourself, you become more willing to take risks. Because failure doesn't threaten your worth anymore. It's just feedback. When you accept yourself, you become more resilient. Because setbacks don't devastate you. They just inconvenience you. When you accept yourself, you become more effective. Because you're not wasting energy on self-hatred. I knew a professor who never contributed in faculty meetings because he was terrified of saying something stupid. He thought staying quiet protected him from judgment. But once he accepted that he might say something stupid sometimes, he started speaking up. And you know what happened? Sometimes he said brilliant things. Sometimes he said mediocre things. Sometimes he said stupid things. And his career improved anyway. Because he was engaged. He was participating. He was human. Ironically, accepting you're flawed makes you more effective, not less. Because you stop playing defense. You stop protecting yourself from imaginary threats. You start living. And here's the other thing. You've been avoiding discomfort your whole life, and it's made you fragile. You think avoiding difficult things is self-care. But it's not. It's self-sabotage. The solution isn't to eliminate discomfort. It's to stop catastrophizing it. You weren't born unable to handle difficulty. You learned to label discomfort as unbearable. Every time you avoid something because it's too hard, you reinforce that belief. Every time you give up because something feels bad, you teach yourself you can't handle bad feelings. I worked with people with social anxiety who avoided social situations not because they couldn't handle them, but because they believed they couldn't handle them. Big difference. They'd say, I can't go to that party, it's too much. I'd say, what do you mean too much? They'd say, I'll be too anxious. I'd say, so? You'll be anxious. So what? And they'd look at me like I was crazy, because they'd convinced themselves that anxiety was unbearable. But it's not. It's just uncomfortable. And you can be uncomfortable and still function. Listen to the language you use. I can't stand it. Yes, you can. You're standing it right now. This is unbearable. If it were unbearable, you'd be dead. You're bearing it. I can't handle this. You're handling it. Badly, maybe, but you're handling it. Your language creates your experience. Every time you tell yourself you can't handle something, you make yourself weaker. Stop telling yourself you're weak. You're not weak. You're just practicing weakness. And here's something else you need to understand. Discomfort is not damage. Anxiety feels bad, but doesn't hurt you. Embarrassment is uncomfortable, but not dangerous. Rejection is painful, but not evidence of your worthlessness. You've been treating discomfort as an emergency, like something terrible is happening that you need to escape immediately. But it's not. It's just a feeling. An unpleasant feeling, sure, but just a feeling. Think about lifting weights. Lifting weights is uncomfortable. Your muscles burn. You get tired. It's not fun, but that discomfort is the point. That's how you get stronger. Mental discomfort works the same way. You feel anxious giving a presentation. That discomfort is how you learn to give presentations without being controlled by anxiety. You feel awkward in social situations. That discomfort is how you learn to be comfortable being awkward. Your feelings won't kill you. Your avoidance might. So how do you build tolerance? You do the thing that makes you uncomfortable. You prove to yourself you can handle it. Each exposure weakens the fear. I used to do this thing where I'd purposely embarrass myself in public. I'd go to a crowded place and do something ridiculous. Why? To prove to myself I could handle embarrassment. To prove that the thing I was terrified of wasn't actually that bad. And it worked. After you embarrass yourself on purpose a few times, accidental embarrassment stops being such a big deal. You don't overcome fear by thinking about it. You overcome it by doing the thing and surviving. By proving to your nervous system that the threat isn't real. Your brain thinks rejection is dangerous, so you avoid rejection. But all that does is confirm to your brain that rejection is dangerous. The way you fix it is by getting rejected and noticing that you survive, that you're okay, that it wasn't actually the catastrophe your brain predicted. Here's the paradox. The more you avoid discomfort, the more you suffer. The more you face it, the less it controls you. You've been running from the wrong thing. You've been running from feelings, from discomfort, from the possibility of failure. But those things aren't the problem. Your refusal to experience them is the problem. So let me bring this all together because I've given you a lot. And I want to make sure you understand what to do with this information. Your intelligence is not your enemy. Your demands are. Stop demanding that you must be perfect. You won't be. Accept it. Stop demanding that people must treat you fairly. They won't always. Deal with it. Stop demanding that life must be comfortable. It won't be. Handle it. Your suffering comes from these demands, not from reality. And the brilliant thing about this, you can change your demands. You can't always change reality. When you catch yourself spiraling, ask, what am I demanding right now? What am I clinging to? And then ask, is this demand helping me or hurting me? Most of the time, you'll see that you're creating your own misery. And once you see it, you can stop doing it. This isn't about being positive. It's about being rational, really rational. Not the fake rationality where you justify your anxiety. Real rationality where you demand evidence for your beliefs. Where you question your automatic thoughts. Where you separate facts from feelings. Where you accept reality instead of demanding it be different. Accept yourself as a flawed human being. Build your tolerance for discomfort. Challenge your catastrophic thoughts. And stop rating your worth based on your performance. You don't need to be perfect to be happy. You don't need everyone's approval. You don't need life to be easy. You just need to stop demanding these things and start living in reality. That's where happiness is, not in some perfect future where you've fixed all your flaws. In reality, right now, flawed, uncertain, uncomfortable reality. And if you want to keep going deeper on this, I got another video that's going to blow your mind. It's about the single biggest lie smart people tell themselves about relationships. The lie that keeps you lonely even when you're surrounded by people. Click it right now, because once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it. And trust me, you need to see this. Go watch it.